Welcome back to Neil Ratner Rock Doc's Reading Room, where I'm serializing my book, A Rock Doc. All right, so where did we leave off? I am now finishing up my anesthesia residency, and I see possibly a way to make a living as an anesthesiologist, which I had been having trouble doing because I didn't want to be in a hospital. And so I was looking for a way. And again, it looks like I could possibly go into doctors' offices and provide anesthesia for the surgery they were doing in their offices. And of course, plastic surgeons, cosmetic surgeons, were very attractive to me because I knew they were doing most of their surgery. I would like to do a good part of their surgery in the office. They do most of it in the hospital because they had nobody giving anesthesia as far as I can see. And so that was my idea. And I had read something in the paper about Michael Jackson visiting his favorite plastic surgeon, who happened to be a surgeon in the hospital I was finishing my residency. So now I'm getting ready to approach him to see if I can work in his office. All right, here we go. So, and this is now it's like 1985. It's probably May of 1985. Okay. All right, so his name was Edgar Somers. His day at the hospital was Tuesday. It seemed best to approach him after he came out of surgery, and I felt positive that I would be successful with my proposal. I didn't want Somers to know I was a resident, so I put on a long white coat with a nondescript title, Anesthesiology Department, written over the breast pocket. He walked out of the OR alone. I came up the hall from behind and tapped him on the shoulder. "Hello, Dr. Somers. My name is Dr. Neil Ratner." "Hello, Dr. Ratner. Nice to meet you. What can I do for you?" "Dr. Somers, I've heard a lot about you. I know you have a busy office practice with important patients. I'd like to ask you a question." "Sure, go ahead." "Who gives anesthesia in your office?" "Well, what do you mean? I give some sedation." "Yes, I'm sure you do. But don't you have an anesthesiologist come in for bigger cases?" I could see the wheels turning in his mind. I had his attention. It was time to move in for the finish. "Dr. Somers, if you had an anesthesiologist come to your office, you could do many of your hospital cases right there. I would work with you to make sure your OR had the right equipment. Don't you think many of your patients would prefer to have surgery in the office?" From the look of intense interest on his face, I knew what he would say next, and I wasn't disappointed. "When can you start?" I was pretty sure he wouldn't question my credentials because he just assumed I was an anesthesiologist on staff at the hospital. Whether he asked around about who I was, I don't really know. A week after my residency finished, I was on board in his office, and my technique both pleased and intrigued him. During my training, I had concentrated on the smaller cases, and especially on the goal of keeping a patient comfortable and immobile without using general anesthesia. I'm going to stop here for a minute. Now, I felt very comfortable with these small cases because I had done a lot of them in the hospital, and I knew if you combine the drugs properly and you prepared the patient well, you could keep the patient very immobile and also give the patient a unique experience. So now I want to catch you up on the Leo Zeff story. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, I told you about meeting Leo Zeff. He was this clinical psychologist from Berkeley, California, and he was very, very involved with the research and development of psychedelic, psychotropic medicines with a group of people really around the world, but they were pretty much concentrated in California with little satellites in various other places. And Leo had turned Leanne and I on to MDMA, which was an incredible experience. And then he had told me about his organization, and I wanted to get involved. And so he said, "Sure, but this is serious business. This is really a form of psychedelic psychotherapy that we do. And so if you really want to get involved, you've got to go through the therapy." I said, "Okay." So he said, "Well, I'm in California, but I have some people. I have a couple in New York that are really my right-hand people. And I'll give you their information. I'll let them know you're going to call them, and then you can take it from there, and you and I will keep in contact. So when I got back to the States, I don't know how long after that, maybe, a couple months after that, I gave these people a call, and I felt comfortable with what they were telling me. And they said, well, the first thing that you would need to do is something called a picture trip. And I said, okay, what's that? And they explained, they gave me some, a reading list so that I could understand, because I was a resident at the time, and I definitely had a technical background, and they wanted me to understand, what was behind the psychedelic psychotherapy. And they gave me something to read by Stanislav Grof, a whole bunch of stuff, which basically talked about the fact that with their form of therapy, the idea was to take a very large dose of a psychedelic psychotropic substance, which then could take you to the point of ego death. Your ego has to go away. Your ego has to die for you to get on the other side of things and be able to experience life kind of as it truly is, without the coloring of your ego in everything that you do. And a lot of people, when they independently take psychedelics, LSD, you hear a lot of stories about people, they thought they were going to die and they were afraid and blah, blah, blah. Well, in a way, in order to really have the benefit of the trip, they needed to die. But to do that properly, I had done a lot of psychedelics by myself over the years. But once I started working with these people in a therapeutic type of way, it was a whole different story. So that was the theory. And the picture trip basically was, they gave me an autobiography. It was like a 10-page autobiography, which went through, it was really probably the most extensive autobiography I had ever attempted to write. And it went through every aspect, social and scholastic and physical health and mental health and psychosocial, sexual. It was extensive in every way. And the whole idea is, once you start to do that, you start to bring up the stories that create who you are. And many of those stories are not so good. It's like a computer, you have a computer loop. It goes back to the theory of imprinting. At different times in your life, when you're ready to develop an attitude towards something, an experience will happen, and that will help you develop that attitude. If it's a positive experience, it'll be a positive attitude. If it's a negative experience, negative attitude. That loop goes forever and ever and ever, and it's very hard to break. People go through therapy for years to break those loops. But, Leo had said, through psychedelic psychotherapy, we can do things much faster in a much more efficient way. And so that was kind of the idea of the autobiography. And then at the end of the autobiography, there was a whole list of pictures that I had to accumulate, starting from when I was as young as I had pictures of, and then every 6 months to a year, and also pictures of ceremonies and friends and things that were important. And so I did the autobiography, and I accumulated the pictures, and I went and had the experience, and it was an unbelievable experience. It was with LSD, pure LSD, and it was a very large dosage, and I did experience ego death, and it was just so different than all the times I had done it myself. It was a real introspective experience, fearful at times, but once I could get through that fear to the other side of the fear, it was an amazingly wonderful experience. At any rate, that started me on that road. From there, I did guided experiences of other substances they were working with, like ayahuasca and ibogaine and whatever. I learned through those experiences that if you can put somebody in a certain frame of mind, they can have a really terrific experience. And so the idea as it related to anesthesia was, okay, I didn't have psychedelic drugs per se, nor would I want to in the operating room. But the drugs that I had definitely had certain kinds of effects. And if I could prepare people as I was prepared, in the case of the operating room with, say, a creative visualization, put people in a safe, comfortable place. And then with the music, spiritually lifting, non-worded music, which these people had found, and later it evolved into New Age music, can be very emotionally exciting in a good way. And so with the music and the use of the drugs that I had in surgery, I felt from taking that experience that I had with the psychedelics, I felt that I could sort of, quote unquote, trip people in the operating room. I wouldn't be tripping them, I would just be giving them a uniquely beneficial experience apart from the surgery. And I mixed my medications carefully, and I used music, and I was very good at what I did. So that's kind of the background of why I thought I can do it, and one of the reasons that I went into office-based surgery. Okay, so when cases were done in the hospital under local anesthesia with sedation, called conscious sedation, commonly patients moved around because most anesthesiologists were uncomfortable keeping patients in anything but a very light state. Surgeons hated to work on a moving target, but it was the accepted norm. I couldn't understand it, why these anesthesiologists couldn't keep the patients still, but it was a fear. These patients didn't have a tube down their throats, and they were breathing on their own. Okay. I had a clear enough understanding of medications and their combinations so that I was comfortable keeping patients in a deeper state. And a lot of that came from my experience using and then giving, working as a psychedelic psychotherapist, so to speak, on the side. My patients almost never moved during surgery, and the surgeons couldn't believe it. Office anesthesia was especially challenging and took great attention to detail. When a patient is under general anesthesia, it's a matter of watching the monitors. With a patient under conscious sedation, while the monitors are still very important, it's also crucial to watch the patient. They'll tell you in advance with small movements and muscle twitches when it's time for more or less medications. Somers had never seen an anesthesiologist do what I did. He couldn't believe it was possible to keep a patient so deep, yet have that person wake up so fast and without nausea. Every plastic surgeon's nightmare is a beautifully done facelift ruined by the trauma of post-op retching and vomiting. It took real skill to mix the right medications and give them in a way so that the patient woke up smoothly. Doctors and especially cosmetic surgeons love to brag, and Somers was no different. By the beginning of August, I was overwhelmed with requests to give anesthesia in other offices. You know what? Maybe I'll stop there. I still have a little to go to talk about this, but I'll do that next week. So yeah, that's it. I started with Somers, and before I knew it, every well-known cosmetic surgeon in New York City had my phone number, and so that created a business of sorts. And I started to talk to other people. People saw what I was doing. Other people decided to also try to make a living in the office or do it on the side. And it went on from there. Okay, that's it for today. All right, I hope you enjoyed it. I didn't give you a very full explanation of the whole psychedelic thing and the psychedelic therapy thing, but as we go along, I'll give you more and more. I wanted to make sure that I tied it into this part of the book so that, it all made sense. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to see you again next week for another episode. You know where to find me everywhere else. And always remember, keep on rocking. All right, bye now.